We are going to continue to talk about Jacob. I have titled on today's sermon, A Priest of Peniel. Wait a minute. Okay, that's a Google translation. Okay, well, that's okay. Actually, I wanted to say a patriarch of Peniel. I didn't even check that somehow. That's kind of interesting. Patriarch of Peniel. Okay. Does anybody know what this is? The only person who knows about this is my wife. So okay. This is a tool in old day in Korea, or even some other tradition actually, used to separate rice from stones. In the old day, when they harvest rice, there were a lot of stones and grain that it is not as a real rice, but it is part of other things, debris. So they had to have tools to kind of separate the rice out of all that. So they put a bag of rice into the water, and using this tool to kind of get the rice into this tool. So that's one of the tools. And in old tradition that the people have harvesting on a grain, on a like ground and things like, they still have something similar kind of tools in their culture. In old day in Korea, what they have done this is like they hang this on the wall of their house in the New Year time, thinking that the blessings will come upon and feel that the jar, whatever you call it. So bokjori, that's what they call it in Korean. But I don't know what translation we could have in English. So it's the reason I show you this is that I think any culture, every generation love to receive blessings. Blessing is something that we all want. Okay, so today's keyword is the blessing. So as we are diving into Jacob's life, in today's passage, we encounter stories that he is appointed as a patriarch. Well, maybe not so much appointed, but he's becoming a patriarch that it is right for his tribes, And in doing so, he received blessing from God. So in order for us to be able to give blessing to others, what is the prerequisite? In order for you to give blessing to others, what is your prerequisite? That you need to receive the blessing for yourself first. Without anything for you to give to anybody, you cannot give. I mean, I know there's a lot of people who wants to help homeless and then do good things to the community. But somehow, if you're struggling for yourself, you have nothing to share with others, can you share anything with others? No, not really. You have hearts to serve, you have hearts to share, but you don't have nothing to share. That's a kind of bad situation to be in. The same for the blessings. In order for us to be a person who can be the channel of blessing, be a blessing to others, we must have the blessing. And so today, as Jacob is taking this pilgrimage journey, and then he is going to encounter this moment where he received blessing from God. So let's take turn read these verses. This time I'm going to separate groups. So first we're going to have brother read, and then after that we'll have sister read. All right. Let's begin. So Jacob was left alone, and the men wrestled with him till daybreak. When the men saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. Then sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his heat. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites do not eat the tendon attached to the socket of the heel, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. He put the female servant and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brothers. Amen. So last week we have learned about Jacob made a treaty with Laban, his uncle or his father-in-law, to not to cross the boundary of the borderline where they put the stones together and then set a contract together. So that relationship, that chapter of the life of Jacob is closed. So now he's returning home. Now he's taking journey to go back home. I mean, can you imagine after 20 years? After 20 years of hardship, all the dramas with family of Laban and, but now he ended up, how many wives? 2 wives. Actually, and then 2 concubines. And how many children? 12 children, 11 sons, 1 daughter. And bunch of cows and cattle and donkeys and all this. I mean, he became wealthy. Now he's traveling, but he had a big, huge problem on his face right now because he could not get to his hometown without going through his brother Esau. He's in Edom right now, and there, Shechem, that there is, the Esau is right now occupied. And he has to pass through. And his fear of encountering him was always in him from the day he was born, actually, to all these years. And especially when he deceived him and ran away from him, that fear, it wasn't an ordinary fear or typical fear, but it was more of traumatized. It is the one in modern day you have to see doctor with. It wasn't something that he can take care of just thinking positively, no. And that's the struggle that he was in, knowing that he needs to encounter Esau. So what does he do when he realizes that he is there? Well, there's 4 steps he's going through, I realize in today's passage. The first, he chooses worldly ways to solve his problem. Well, that's what we do typically. Whenever we have a problem, we put our own hands together to solve the problem. Jacob, he did that way too. He figured that he need to let Esau know that he's coming. And then he need to peace with him somehow. Somehow he need to please him that he's coming. So what did he do? He sent a messenger ahead of him and telling him that he is coming. But he also let him know that all these years that he was in his uncle's place, and all these years that he left home without anything, he reminded his brother that he left home without anything. Right? Remember that the elders' inheritance fight is about wealth. But he reminded him saying, hey, I didn't take anything. It was only this, cane, empty hand. But now, in these 20 years, now I have so many cows and cattle and donkeys and all these. Now, brother, I'd like to share this with you. But not only he tells him that message, but he makes sure his servant is called Esau, my Lord. He's saying, tell him that my master Jacob is saying, my Lord, take these gifts from me. So he's keep referring him, Esau, as my Lord, as a name they call God, almost. So it shows that how humbly that he is ready to meet Esau. But unfortunately, when the messenger came back, he delivered a very shocking news. Well, the servant delivered the message to Esau, but Esau decided to pursue after Jacob with his 400 men. So now he's coming down to get you. That was the message of the messenger, saying, I delivered the message of yours message to your brother, but he decided to come with 400 men to you now. He's coming right now. Can you imagine what went through Jacob's mind at this point? I mean, I bet his heart dropped, it's like, oh, what's going on? Oh, he tried. I mean, it takes courage to even let him know that I'm coming, right? He's a runaway. I mean, he's saying, I'm coming. I mean, that's so scary to do. I mean, he's ready to encounter. He overcame, and then he decided to share all the wealth with his brother. But now, Esau, he doesn't positively respond to that, but he's coming after him now with 400 men. Scary. But if you were to think about it, can you imagine what can you do as a Jacob if you were Jacob in that situation? I mean, Jacob just continued to do his own ways, his own way, continue to plan his own way. Whenever we are facing a fear in life because of whatever reason, we all have a different way of getting fear. When you are in a situation and somehow fear seeps into your heart, well, how do you deal with it? And this is very typical way we deal with it too. But guess what? Our own way of solving our own problem has a limitation. It only works the way it works the way that I intended. Do you see the problem? It only works the way you intended to work. But in life, what happened? Most of the time, does it turn the way you turn it? Does it end up the way you always expect? No. Most of the time, that's not the truth. Most time, it just doesn't happen the way you expect. So guess what happened? If we continue to depend on the worldly way to solve our problem, your chances of overcoming it is lessened. That's the lesson we need to. Well, again, same here, Jacob, he somehow wanted to give his wealth, portion of his wealth, to his brother. Somehow he thought his mistake was taking away elders' birthright. And he thought somehow it was something to do with the possession. And so by offering Esau his wealth to his brother, that he would accept this peace. But that wasn't the case. Because for Esau, it was a different matter. He was deceived. It was more than just the tangible goods. It was what's been hurt inside. And that was a bigger problem. Well, luckily though, Jacob has somebody he can go to. In that moment, he had no choice but to turn to God. I mean, he said, I'm going to give you my belonging. I'm ready to peace with you. But Esau is coming with 400 men to pursue after him. So what can he do? Well, he asked for God's grace to solve his problem. He kneeled down and he prayed before God. This is what he prayed. Save me, I pray, from the hands of my brother Esau, for I am afraid that he will come and attack me. And also the mothers with their children. Can you imagine Jacob right now in his mind? For sure, Esau will come with his 400 men, will attack him and slaughter every one of them. I mean, can you see the depths of the fear that he has in his heart? And he has no choice but to turn to God. And we have same options most of the time. When we are in trouble, we can come to God. But the problem with this kind of prayer, though, is this is very typical prayer. But it is very egocentric. This kind of prayer is still about Jacob himself. He's saying, God, I need help. Because Esau is coming after me. He's going to slaughter me and my family. God, save me. You hear the prayer that we typically pray to God, saying, God, help me. I need you. God, you need to help me because I need whatever that I'm praying. But isn't it that still everything is about me? Isn't it still everything about worldly things that I need? You see, that's the kind of prayer. I mean, if he was one step beyond this prayer, probably he should ask for forgiveness. He should repent that what he had done against his brother caused him to be angry and ask for forgiveness in that term. But he's forgetting to do. He's just asking God, save me. But the thing is this, I think this is grace of God. Even though this is what typically we do, that we are able to even bring this kind of prayer before God, it's a grace of God. When the people have no faith in God, when people have no idea about God exists, they have nothing to turn to. Can you imagine that? That lonely feeling. There's no one. When their relative, when their family turn their back on them, they have no way to turn. No one, literally. But for us believers, we have who? We have God. It's the grace of God. Jacob found it in this. And that still is God's leading. Because we ought to do that even though we may offer a not adequate prayer before God. Well, the problem with this kind of prayer though is this. It doesn't matter how often, how many times you pray the Lord, this kind of prayer, it cannot change you. I'm not sure you understand this part. Your prayer, doesn't matter how often, how hard you pray before the Lord, that prayer will not change you. Will not change you to transform yourself. Will not change your lifestyle. Will not change your life habits. You see, God asks us to pray not because God doesn't know what we need. God already knows what we need. Then why God asks us to pray? Through our own prayer, that we see the need of change in us. So that we get the strength to change ourselves. It's almost like aligning ourselves to the will of God. But that alignment has to be done by myself. No one's going to do it. No one's going to push you. It is you and I need to realign ourselves to the will of God. How does that happen? A lot of time in our prayers. But when our prayer remain worldly, only just dealing with the desires and then provisions we need, then it has no power to change us. Because I don't see the need for us to change because you only expect God to do His job. But there's a lot of part that I have to do in this life. Jacob, obviously, his prayer didn't really change him much because he decided to prepare the gift for Esau's. I mean, he prepared, let me read you like the list of the things that he prepared for his brother. He prepared 550 Cattle and donkeys and camels and everything. 550 animals. That's a huge pasture. I mean, that's a lot of money even in modern day. That's what Jacob is offering to his brother, basically. So what he did was he separated them and then sent them away to Esau as a gift. But he also ended up actually send his family members too. Thinking, and as he's dividing this gift to several batches of group, so he's sending them one by one. So he sent the first group ahead, and then delayed some, and then second group of cattle and gift, and they go. So he's making this one by one, traveling to Esau. The reason he's doing that is as Esau is receiving these gifts, his anger will slowly diminish, slowly. That was his strategy, tactic. You see, that's Jacob. So that's what he did. He didn't change a bit. But something happened to Jacob. This is where God involves. Because typically, if God doesn't find favor in you, you might not have this kind of encounter. Some reason that night when he was by himself with his family, probably he was trying to go to sleep, probably he couldn't go to sleep. Because somehow he couldn't find peace in his heart. Because we know the gift will not resolve the issue. So he even decided to send all those gifts to Esau. Somehow he couldn't sleep. So he woke up at night and he decided to send all his family and all his belonging over the Peniel River. And so he moved all his family members and all his belonging over the Peniel River. And he came back, crossed back to the other side, and now he's by himself overnight. All alone right now. But right here, somehow the author begins to narrate about a very strange encounter. It's an encounter explaining, saying Jacob is wrestling with a strange man. No explanation how it started, why they are wrestling. But they are wrestling, but their skill kind of matching. So it didn't end. So they are wrestling till daybreak. Crazy. The man, he realized he couldn't win over him, so he decided to hit him. This left side of him, because probably he used right hand. In those days, left hand is not used much. So he used right hand to hit him, so probably what happened to Jacob's left hip? The socket came off. He became handicapped right there. But Jacob did not let go of him still. Still hold on to him. All night, all till until the morning. And the man said, let me go. The day breaks. Let me go. Jacob said, no. Until you bless me, I will not let you go. Until you bless me. Well, actually, the narration doesn't really explain why Jacob is asking blessing from this man. This man turned to him and said, what is your name? Jacob said, Jacob. And the man said, from now on, you're not a Jacob. You will be called Israel. We don't know who this man is, but we become aware of who he is at the end of the story, because when the man changed Jacob's name to Israel and he blessed him over Jacob, and then he left, and Jacob called that place called Peniel. It's a new name. It means face of God. So now you have idea what Jacob think of the man. Somehow for Jacob, he had wrestled with God all night long till the morning. Yet he saw God, he did not die. That's the narration. And so he named the place Peniel. That Jabbok River is the actual name of the place. But the place that he met and wrestled with the man, he named it Peniel. It's face of God. This is the place Jacob saw face of God. But we know that's not God who Jacob wrestled with. It's probably the servant of God, angel of God. We know that's how God works most of the time. Most of the time God sent his servant instead of him coming, because no one can see God and live. It is always his servant. But Jacob said, I have seen God. That statement is also right, because God's servant always represent God in a very honest way. So it is 100% God's messages delivered. So now, when God asked Jacob, what is your name? God does not know the name of the man he visited. He knew it was Jacob. Then what is the reason why he asked, what is your name? It's this. God wanted Jacob to realize who he is. Jacob means what? The man who grabs the heels of a man. That was the name given because he was holding on to Esau's heel as he was coming out of his mom's womb. He was a deceiver that way. And all his life, that's the kind of life he's been living. He was always holding on to the heels of this world, trying to get the chance to gain the power, the wealth. And that's how he deceived Esau, right? Firstborn rights. Deceive his father. That's how he become runaway fugitives. And as he was earning out his own name, I am the deceiver. And he said, Jacob, literally that means deceiver. I'm the one who grabs on the heels of others. And God said, no, you no longer will be that. From now on, you will live as Israel. And then God explained why. He said, because you have wrestled with God and the man, and you overcame. Literally, what God is saying is, Jacob, you have won this wrestle with me. So now you deserve to have this new name. And God blessed him and ran away. But actually, the name Israel is different. So what God has explained to Jacob was indirect translation. It has a lot of dynamic meaning in it. It means God's messages embedded in it. The direct translation in Israel means God reigns. God wins. It is the Israel is the subject. God is the victor. And so in this wrestle, God told Jacob that you are the victor. You won this wrestle, but actually who won the wrestle? God. It was God who came. It was God who came and made Jacob Israel. Did Jacob become Israel because he has changed? Not yet. But God gave that name first. People to believe that Jacob has won the wrestle. But he did not win the wrestle because, in a way, God led him. It was God who declared the victory over this wrestle because he fulfilled his covenant over his life. He's making him the great patriarchs who will fulfill his covenant through his life. One thing for us to remember out of this whole story is that when we hold on to the heels of this world, it's a figurative speech, right? Because of our own desire, we continue to hold on to the heels of this world. Guess what happened? We'll continue to live in the fear of evil. We cannot never shake off the fear of this world. Do you see that? When we are pursuing after the things of this world, the power of this world, the glory of this world, guess what? We live in fear of this world. Jacob, when he began to live and grasp, hold on to God, and he did not let go of, even though his socket, the hip socket was off, misaligned, he was still holding on to the man. He was holding on to God, right? And finally he became Israel. Not because he became a victor, but it is God who is reigning over him, as long as he's holding on to him. And that's how he began to walk as a great ancestor, the patriarchs. Yeah, patriarchs. Many times we are in that similar situation. We have not called by God saying, oh, your name is Israel. But in reality, we also call as Israel. We as a believer, we declare that God reigns. God is the victor. As long as we hold on to Him, that God will come and allow us to change ourselves. You see, when God, the servant of God, left him, and the sun rises in this Jabbok River, where he called it Peniel. Sun's rising and shining upon his face, and Jacob now crossing the river, where his families are, where his possessions are. And he watched the 400 men with asses coming toward him. And guess what he did? Actually, he lined up his family members. First, he made the servant maid and his children in the front line, and then Leah, and then his children, and then finally his beloved, most loved wife, Rachel, and his son, Jacob, finally in the back. So these are sequence of what? It's the way he loved them. What is honest emotion, his feeling toward his family members. I mean, I don't know you accept that or not, but for me, I accept that. We all have our favorites. And sometimes it's nothing wrong with that. It's depending on how you treat them, but that's what he did, Jacob did. But what change has occurred is Jacob, before the night, he remained by himself at the end. But this time, as he's watching Esau's coming with 400 men, guess what he does? As he's limping, because his socket's off now, he's limping, and guess what he does? He goes to the front of all his family members. And 7 times he bowed down before Esau and approaching Esau. The 7th time here, it doesn't mean that he did actually 7 times. The number 7 in Bible is a creation perfect number. To me, it's the way I translate it. Jacob actually bowed down humbly until Esau saw genuineness of Jacob. His brother Jacob actually genuinely, humbly repent before him. It wasn't just uttering out, my Lord, but he was truly expressing his repenting heart as he's approaching Esau. So guess what Esau did? He come and hug and kisses. There's no war. There's no battle. As a matter of fact, Esau said, I don't want to receive your gift. I have enough. I don't need this. Well, of course, Jacob said, you still need to have it. So that's a very Palestinian way of doing this. I don't want it, you gotta have it. I don't want it even, okay, then finally you end up receiving it. That's what happened. But the change is this. Jacob now became Israel. He is in the front of his family. Now he is the great patriarch, the leadership. He wanted to be at the end because of the fear. He wanted to be saved at least last. All his carols and families and then but now he is in the front. And he genuinely ask the forgiveness from Esau. This is man of God, Israel. When God is in you, in your leadership, you humbly kneel down. Rightfully. Well, it's not before God, it's before Esau. Many leadership failure is because when we fail to let go of our ego. Because we cannot kneel down to the person who really deserves our respect and honor. And Jacob, that's the beginning of him becoming a true leadership in his patriarch leadership in the people of Israel. And we know that Israel became the name of the nation itself. Okay? Jacob's name became the name of the nation. And out of that, there's 12 tribes. And this is the beginning of the history. How God has made his people using one man, one runaway fugitive. And now he became. And so, for us, maybe you and I, we maybe see ourselves as very ordinary, simple, and powerless. Maybe sometimes clueless, because you don't see really what's going on in the future. You may not see yourself anything. But same for Jacob. Jacob saw himself a deceiver. That's what the struggle he had all his life. But now he became Israel, a man of God, and a man who allowed God to become the victor. And I hope that same blessing come upon you. Somehow you encounter God, and God will give you a new name. You don't have to be who you used to be. Forget about that. But now be this Israel, God who reigns over you. God who declares victory over your life. Then we begin to change. We begin to change. The life we live is greater than we see ourselves. You and I, we are greater man and woman than we perceive ourselves. Because God sees a lot more we cannot see. I mean, who would imagine deceiver Jacob become Israel? And same for all of us. The same blessing is open up for us. And that's the same invitation God always has for us. So hopefully that blessing come upon us, all of us. And so that our life, we become more like Israel, who become the channel of blessing. Not only we take care of ourselves, but we become the blessing to others. And hopefully you all become a great channel of blessing that blesses abundantly all nations, all tribes, all tongues. Not limited to one nation, but all tribes. And that's God's covenant. That's God's promise. Let's pray.